We always have to put a disclaimer at the beginning of a homily on this feast, because the gospel that we hear proclaimed is not about the Immaculate Conception of Mary. The Immaculate Conception is something, if Mary was, a young woman in her early teens, then the Immaculate Conception was something that took place 14 or 15 years before this. But there is nothing in the Gospels anywhere that speaks of Mary being conceived by a special favor of God without sin. Mary doesn't come into the gospel picture until it's time for us to start talking about Jesus. So, every year we hear what is a wonderful story, and every year we spend just a few moments saying, okay, but that's not why we're here. The thing about this scene, this Annunciation, in the Second Vatican Council, the Church used this scene, this story, to hold up Mary as the perfect model of the disciple. At the end, he says, I don't understand, but I trust God. I am the maidservant of the Lord. Let it be done to me as you say. I'm willing to trust God. I'm willing to say yes to God. So the Feast of the Annunciation, which we celebrate on March 25th, 9 months before Christmas, is the feast of Mary's yes. What we celebrate tonight is really the feast of God's yes. Yes, my people, you are worth it. Yes, my people, I do love you and care about you. Yes, my people, I will bring you salvation. Yes, I see the good that's in you. Yes, I know the potential as well that's there. Mary said yes in spite of uncertainty, maybe even some fear. Mary said yes in spite of so many reasons to pull back, to doubt, to be afraid, because Mary had been yesed from the beginning of her existence. And so for us, as we continue in this Advent season, even though we get to kind of, take a break tonight and make it a more joyful celebration, maybe one of our challenges is to take a look. How much am I living up to my Christian call? my call to holiness, my call to wholeness, my call to say yes to God, yes to goodness, yes to grace. This is called Two at the Counter. The Reverend Martin E. Pike tells this story. 3 minutes had elapsed since I had taken my seat at the lunch counter. Waitresses passed me by. 2 cooks and a busboy took no notice of my presence. My ego was soothed only because the truck driver seated next to me was ignored as well. Maybe this counter's off limits, I said to him. Maybe they're short of help, he responded. Maybe they don't want our business, I said. Maybe they're taking care of those at the tables, was his reply. The hands on the clock continued to move. Maybe they don't like us, I insisted. The air conditioning feels so good, I don't mind waiting, he said. At this point, a harried waitress stopped to tell us that the water had been cut off and the dishwasher was not functioning. My nameless compatriot smiled and thanked the waitress and left. I didn't like him. 3 times I had sought his support for my obnoxious attitude, but he had let me down. Only later did I realize that he had chosen to practice what I preach. Each day, there are so many invitations in our dealings with one another, in how we view our world and how we express that view. We have the possibilities, we have the opportunities to say yes to God, yes to grace and goodness. But sometimes we forget. Sometimes we get used to forgetting. We get used to complaining and criticizing and looking for the worst and letting our egos get in the way of grace. So much criticizing, so much bitterness that we see and hear going around today. And I need to check myself. How easy has it become for me to be critical, judgmental? If I look for the bad, I'll find it. But if I look for the good, if I remember to look for the good, if I remember to accept God's invitation, I'll find it. So today, tomorrow, each day of Advent, are we remembering to say yes to God's invitation? Are we following Mary's example? She who lived her life as a sign of God's yes. We're called to be that. Let's keep trying. Yes.